Great. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks first for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. This is the very least I can do to try and help out in this terrible time. And thank you for attending and paying, to come see me speak. I hope I live up to expectations. Very happy to be here. I'm talking about a subject that I'm really passionate about, the evolution of Agile leadership. So I work for PMI now. I'm part of the disciplined Agile team there, helping create materials. But most of this material we'll be covering today is from my own company, Leading Answers, which is all about leadership, which I founded over 20 years ago to sort of discuss and promote leadership on teams. So something I'm really keen on. And we'll get into it. So as was explained, my background, I've got a long history in the Agile space, helping develop DSDM. And I've also been volunteering with PMI for a long time as well, trying to get them to accept and incorporate Agile approaches into the different certifications and guides and standards and things. So I authored a couple of Agile books, worked on a number of PMI standards, and the latest I was co-chair on the 7th edition of the PMBOK guide. Also helped on the exam content outline for the new PMP exam that's now sort of 50% Agile and hybrid on the process side. So it's great to see Agile being embraced and adopted. So today we're going to be talking about leadership and leading Agile teams. Leadership is a huge topic. It's broader and older than project management. Anytime we need to enlist the help of others, anything beyond an individual contribution, we need leadership to do that. So we'll be talking about leading Agile teams, servant leadership, which is, the default way Scrum and other Agile approaches recommended we lead our teams. And then we'll talk about some newer approaches that you may not have heard as much about, shared leadership and host leadership, which I think are really exciting developments too. And my goals for today are to connect some ideas you may have. I'm sure most of what I'm talking about you'll have heard about before, but maybe I can create some connections between ideas and topics and what we do in Agile projects. And also I want to provide some extra resources for you. So if this sparks any interest in ideas, to provide some books and resources that you can go learn more about some of those topics. So then, what is leadership? Let's talk about that. Given that we've got a small group here, I'd love to hear from you in terms of what does leadership mean to you? So if you could use the chat window, I have mine open here. Just maybe put in a couple of words as to what leadership means to you. It'd be great to get some ideas flowing.
It can be having power to manage the group or maybe the company.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so either just come off mute and just tell us what you think it means to you, or use the chat window. Either way is good. Anybody else? When you hear the word leadership, what does it mean to you?
Hello, when you have ability to empower and motivate team, to coordinate the activities of the team in order to achieve the overall objectives of the project, program, or etc.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, lots of good stuff in there, empowering and achieving objectives. Yeah, thank you. Integrate and lead a team. We see, yeah, manage a team to achieve its KPIs, absolutely. So there is no single definition of what leadership is. It's a very broad topic. It certainly involves reaching a goal and engaging others in that pursuit, and motivation is a huge one too. One quote that I quite like is, management is getting people to do what needs to be done, and leadership is getting people to want to do what needs to be done. So it's kind of tapping into that motivation side of things, right? So we're moving beyond achieving a list of activities, and we're sort of empowering or encouraging, finding a way to position it so people want to do that. There's another quote I always struggle to remember. It's about, you don't tell people about becoming a sailor. You create this urge and longing for the ocean, right? And then they want to be a sailor, sort of thing. It's about motivation, certainly one of the elements of it. So what does Agile have to do with leadership? Let's talk about that a little bit. And it's about the people. So Agile is humanistic rather than mechanistic. In other words, it talks about people rather than processes. And that's the very first Agile principle, individuals and interactions, people, over processes and tools. So Agile is very humanistic. And so is leadership. And I think this is where the parallels are. So another quote, we manage property and we lead people. If you try to manage people, they'll feel like property. In other words, we want to be sort of motivated and respected and our skills engaged, as opposed to micromanaged or given a task list of activities to complete. If we can find a way to lead people, then they'll be a lot more engaged. And if we try and control people, well, then they feel, more like property. So leadership recognizes the human side, I think, a little bit more than, say, more of a process-oriented aspect. So looking at that quote again about getting people to want to do, and then comparing and contrasting management and leadership, we see that whilst management might focus on the tasks of our project, leadership might have more of a focus on the people. One's on control and efficiency, and leadership's more about empowerment and effectiveness. So are we doing things right, compliance, versus are we doing the right things, decision-making, direction-seeking, consensus building. Speed, how quickly are we climbing this ladder, versus direction. Is the ladder even leaning against the right building? Etc. So they are slightly different, but it's not to say that we can abandon management. And I think sometimes when people talk about the difference between management and leadership, they try and dismiss management, and it's still absolutely necessary. And I see it really as leadership as a progression. So Stephen Covey, in his book, the 7 principles of highly effective people, he talks about how everybody starts off as children dependent upon their parents for food and shelter and everything. And then we grow up and we become independent and we become more mature and more effective. And many people never develop beyond that state of looking after themselves. But Covey talks about a third and more effective state of when we learn to deal and interact and cooperate with other people. So if we can become interdependent, right, this means we can now leverage the strengths and account for, offset the weaknesses of ourselves by working with other people. So if we are really good at sort of strategy, but we're not very good at filling in the details and finishing things off, maybe we can work with someone who's really a detail person. And between us working together, we're a great combination. Maybe someone's, good at giving presentations, but not as good at executing. And again, together, we are more effective by learning to work with other people. So it's a stage of development, learning to work with others. And I think there's a parallel with management and leadership. So we absolutely need to learn the mechanics of running projects. We need to learn how to create a plan and estimate work and look for risks and create strategies for exploiting the opportunities and avoiding the threats, right? All the mechanical good stuff around project management, we absolutely need to know. And then as we continue to mature, and this is a real cool thing, as project managers, we can continue developing our leadership skills, our soft skills, for the rest of our careers. And as we do so, we become more and more effective as a project manager. And I think it's just one of the ways in which project management is a great career. We learn the mechanics, we understand the basics, right, of running a project, but we never stop gaining experience in the leadership skills, which is good. So for me, leadership is the next step beyond management in terms of effectiveness, but we need both. We can't abandon, the planning, the estimating, the scheduling, all that good stuff. We need that, but together we can magnify the productivity of a team. And if we think about productivity, I kind of visualize it as a spectrum, and everybody is somewhere on this spectrum from over here on the left to actually having a net sort of negative impact on the team. This would be a really bad team member who either criticizes or brings down morale or does a really bad job. They're very rare, but I'm sure everybody sometime has worked with somebody, on a project that really you'd be better off without them on the team, because for whatever reason, they actually have a net negative impact on the project performance. A lot more common, though, is to have people, in this passive compliance. Yeah, they're there, they're showing up, but they aren't really contributing as much as they could be. And then we get into active participation. Yeah, they're there and they're doing what's asked, into committed dedication. And this is where people are, bringing in additional insights, being very innovative, and, starting to look beyond their regular role to try and make the project a success, all the way up to passionate innovation, which is the highest level of contribution, is why the large companies, the Amazons and the Facebooks of the world, are still concerned about competition from small organizations started up in a basement or a garage, because quite often innovators and small teams have this passionate innovation, and what they're able to build is significant. So team members are somewhere on this spectrum, and I think our role as a project manager or a scrum master or a team lead is to pull people towards the right-hand side of this spectrum. I really think that that's my role when I'm working with a team. And so I always kind of ask, where am I on this scale myself? Personally, how do I feel about this? And then where are my team members, and how do I move them to the right? And for me, this is really the role of a project manager. Yes, we got to get the project done, but we have this ongoing sort of need to be pulling people to the right. And the way we do that is through leadership. But there's a sort of a caveat. Before we can be effective at leadership, we have to get some basics down first, and that's our emotional intelligence, right? Nobody is going to listen to us as a leader or take us credibly if we are a wreck ourselves, or not credible, or not respected. And so leadership is built on this foundation of emotional intelligence. And this is something I describe in my book, Beyond Agile. So I'll show a couple of pictures of books if you want to read more about this. But emotional intelligence, includes things like our outlook and our resilience. How's our general mood, and how's our stress management, our optimism, our happiness, our stress tolerance and impulse control. Managing self is all about self-awareness and self-management, right? So we need to be sort of at least enough, calm enough, right, or controlled enough that we don't respond negatively to bad news. Otherwise, people won't bring us bad news. And as project manager or team lead, we want to be hearing about bad news from our team so that we can, take action on it quickly, right? So we got to manage ourselves. And the other element of emotional intelligence is working with others. So this is social awareness and relationship management, having empathy towards others, being able to solve problems, and being flexible. And so, yes, we're going to talk about leadership, but it's all built on this foundation of that emotional intelligence, right, that we've got to have. So what is leadership, and what do we mean? What do leaders do, I guess, is something we should explore next. So what leaders do is nicely explained in this book called Project Leadership by Jeffrey Pinto. And this is a great book. It's only about 50 or 60 pages of content. It's very slim. You can read it in a day very easily. And he talks about common leadership practices that apply to any type of project. Doesn't matter if you're in construction or IT or medical devices or whatever. He nicely outlines characteristics of a leader. And he talks about these 5. Modeling desired behavior, creating and communicating a vision for the project, enabling others to act, this willingness to challenge the status quo and change things up and improve as we go. And of course, encouraging each other. And as I've moved from traditional project management through agile project management, we're now looking at different models. You know, these 5 practices still hold true. And it gives us a good framework to explore leadership. So the first one here, modeling desired behavior, you know, being the character you would like to see on your teams, you know, begs a question. So what is desired behavior? What should we be modeling? And another book, this one's a bit tougher to read, quite a large book, Kuzis and Posner's The Leadership Challenge. It's like been reprinted many, many times, super popular book, very well worth reading. And they did this very long study where they've asked over 75,000 people, what values do you look for in a leader? And they give them a list of 20 things and say, rank these, tell me the top 5 or the top 10 of these ideas that you look for in a leader. And so I think it's useful, you know, to think back to the best project you've ever worked on, or the best manager you've ever worked for, or best leader you've ever had for a company, and think about what qualities did that person have, or what qualities would you like to, you know, work with, because we want to understand what this modeling desired behavior is. And you know, again, in the chat, maybe pick out 2 or 3 of these. And for you, it would be nice to hear, how would you rank these qualities? What do you look for in a leader? So we'll spend a minute here just to get some thoughts and feedback, either in the chat or just call them out. It is a small group.
Trust probably will be the one that is very important. Trust. And honesty.
Yeah, I can say trust isn't an option, but I think the one there that is honest, right? That would be the one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You, absolutely. Any other suggestions? I'm sorry, did I miss one?
Any ideas, guys?
Yeah. Inspiration. I think it is starting of very important in this case, because when you lead people, you should inspire them to motivate to reach goals.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, and we've got giving examples. Sure. Well, thank you. No, it's good to, I know I put you on the spot. The questionnaire that accompanies this expands on each of these points and gives an example of what this means. So we didn't have that here. But what's interesting is this study has been done over a long period, over many years, and the number one thing that always comes up is honesty. So like you said, that trust. We need to trust our leaders. And then the next 3 are forward-looking. They need to be able to describe this future state that we want to attain or retain. They need to be competent, right? They don't have to be technically excellent at their role, but we don't want to be embarrassed by our leader. So competent and backed up by people who can fill in any gaps they have, and also inspiring. Right? We don't want to work for someone who's all sort of down and despondent all the time. We want to be inspired a little. And I think as a project manager, you know, modeling desired behavior is one of the leadership characteristics we need to do. So it's you know, critical that we understand, well, what are these desired behaviors? And if we just take nothing away, these are a great set to work from. So honest, forward-looking, competent, and inspiring. And it turns out that the honest one is super important because people won't willingly follow someone if they don't believe in for very long, because it undermines their own personal sense of worth. Right? We feel bad if we're following along with somebody who we think is, not honest. It actually makes us feel bad about ourselves. So how we make sure we are honest is, follow through on what we said we would do, or explain why that no longer makes sense. Don't talk about people behind their back, or spread gossip or rumors ourselves, and just be transparent in everything we do. Assume every email you send is going to be read by everybody, right? Assume people are watching or listening when they're not, and it's just an easier way to represent this desired behavior. So that was one. We'll dig into some of these others here. Creating and communicating a vision, and how does this relate to Agile? So we'll talk about this next leadership practice. So when we're talking about a vision for a project, I often like to give the parallel of, well, what's it like when we don't have good vision? What's it like to drive in fog? What do? Well, we slow down, because when we don't have a clear view of where we're trying to get to, nobody's going to go very fast. And it's the same on our projects as well. A big part of kicking off a project is to create a clear vision of where it is we're trying to get to. And so, this clarity and direction allows us to go fast, right? And it also unites everybody in this common effort. And to be effective, a vision should be this better state. And if we can make it visual, it really helps us by combining the visual, the left and the right portions of our brain. Our left hemisphere is really good at processing lists and dates and numbers, and our right hemisphere is more visual. We want to see an image and things. So one of the tools that we often use in Agile projects is an activity called Design the Product Box, where we get the team working with the business, we mix them up and we separate them into two groups, and we say, imagine this project is going to ship something in a box in 6 months' time or a year's time when it finishes. Your job for the next 20 minutes is to design that box, right? And you can put a logo on the front and the top 3 priority items on the front only, the next 10 on the back. And then in 20 minutes, you come back and you present. And why this is super useful as a kickoff meeting activity, as opposed to, getting to know each other and things, is that it forces discussion about that end goal, right? And it creates a visual and a uniting vision of what we're trying to build. And I've worked with teams where they come up with these boxes and they actually retain them and put them in their team area and use them as a bit of a reminder of what we're doing and why we're doing it. So after the 20 minutes, the teams, each team comes back and presents, and we think it should be called the ABC project. Here's our logo and here's our top priority 3 things. And then the other team comes up and says, no, we think it should be called, X, Y, Z. And our top priority 3 things are this. And if you split the teams up, we've often had some great discussions about the top 3 priority features for a project at that kickoff meeting. That's way more valuable when they're just bullet points on a cereal box, as opposed to 3 months down into the project when we're discussing, the highest priority elements. So Jim Highsmith described this first, but he didn't invent it. There was another exercise called Design the Product Brochure that predates Agile. But it's a popular technique. It's something that you can do in your kickoff meetings. Here's an example of one I did on an IT project. It was for reporting. This company were pulling data from different sources that hadn't been able to be combined before. And they wanted the facility to create their own custom reports as well. So it was a useful exercise. After the 2 teams presented, you create a new 3rd sort of box where you consolidate the 2 teams' worth of efforts and align on a final version. This other example, I blacked out the name of the company. They were redoing their PMO. Their PMO had been dubbed a bit of a process police. All that they ever did was complain about projects not completing artifacts properly. And so teams started to bypass them, right, and not engage with the PMO. And so they rebranded, relaunched, and they wanted to add value with every interaction. That was their biggest thing. So if they went and worked with a team and said, oh, can we see your risk list? If that team didn't have a good one, they'd say, perfect, let's sit down with you and create a risk list together. So they always wanted to add more value than they ever asked for. And they wanted to regain this like portfolio view of all the in-flight projects that they'd lost by people going around the PMO. And they wanted to try and standardize on some deliverables and best practices and things. So it was a useful exercise for them. It doesn't have to be something that you physically ship. It could be an office move. It could be a design for a new educational curriculum. But creating a shared vision, super important. It's a leadership thing. We do it in Agile by techniques such as, design the product box. And we don't sort of define the vision once and leave it there. We always need to be recommunicating that vision. Steering committee meetings, team meetings, having an elevator pitch, a quick message, you can describe it. I've also worked with teams where we developed a project tweet. So how do you describe the project in a very short one sentence? What is it that we're doing? And don't always, leave this to the project manager or scrum master. I like to engage the team. So I'd say, hey, I'm meeting with the steering committee or the executive next week, and I need to explain this next phase or this problem. How am I going to do that? And get the teams to suggest ideas. It not only gives me great ideas, it allows me to check that our kind of understandings are aligned as well, between my understanding of what it is we're trying to do and their understanding. Okay, so another principle is empowering the team, right? Enabling them to act, sharing information, sharing trust with the team. Very important, this idea of creating a learning and sharing environment, building an environment of trust and safe contribution, and then people will be a lot more willing to, to help out and suggest ideas. I worked for my very first project manager, this old guy. He said, Mike, you've got two hands to work with. If you're using one hand to cover your rear, then you've only got one hand to work with. In other words, if you're worried about being criticized, then you're not going to be very productive, right? So create a safe space where people are comfortable to contribute. And we do that by setting an example. So, if you make a mistake, tell the team, hey, I'm having to resend the status report because I forgot to include the, regression testing effort or something. So admit your own mistakes. It's part of that demonstrating the desired behavior, and share information with the team. Don't hoard information. And ask questions and make sure it's okay for the team to know that asking these questions is good. So do you have what you need? Where do you think we're vulnerable? If we're going to fail in this next phase of the project, what would you bet it would be that would trip us up? So it's good to make it okay to talk about risks, and then your team is more likely to raise them and bring them to you, and ask, where are we not meeting our goals? So this is all wrapped up these days in the concept of psychological safety. And there's another book, I haven't featured it here, but called The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. And it talks about this first one, inclusion safety. This is, do I feel safe to be accepted by the team? For me being me, sort of peculiarities and all, do I feel included and part of the team? So someone asked, what does CYA means? So if, it was part of my idea of, if you've got two hands to work with, and if you're using one hand to sort of protect your rear, so it stands for cover your ass. So that's what CYA is. It's like an American thing. And it's about safety, right? We want people to feel safe. So the next level of safety is learner safety. Do I feel safe to ask questions in my team and in the presence of my project manager, or will I be deemed, well, that was a stupid question, or you should have known that, or whatever? We want to make our environment an environment where anyone can ask questions, and it doesn't matter, right? We just answer it and move on. When we have that learner safety, then things just start going faster, because instead of people being, oh, I don't know what he's talking about, and I'll just keep quiet, hopefully it will become clear, or someone will explain it. We're not really contributing to our full potential then. So if we can break past that and make it abundantly clear that all questions are good, then we can be more effective.
Lela said small.
The next level, this contributor safety, is being safe or feeling safe to have your work judged by your peers. So you're contributing and you're getting feedback at the demo or a retrospective or a code review or whatever, and that's okay, right? So especially in agile teams, we're quite often demoing something that isn't fully fleshed out or built yet, and so we have to have that safety to receive feedback on stuff and not take it personally. You know, they didn't like the new design. Okay, what do we need to change? Not sort of attaching personal connection to that work. And the last level is challenger safety, feeling safe to speak out against the organization or the process and say, you know what, I think we could do better. Why don't we try this instead of that? So psychological safety, a big part of creating a learning and sharing environment, and we try and foster in agile teams. The other thing we can do is share information about the project. I mean, Microsoft project plans are technically far superior to task boards, right? They can show dependencies and resource loads and all kinds of good stuff. But you know what? I would rather have a task board that shows what we're working on, because it's accessible to everybody. Not many team members really go into a project plan, and certainly not many would feel like editing it to say, hey, this is complete, or this is now in progress, for fear of, we've all been there, you change something and suddenly the end date jumps out by 2 months. You go, gee, what was that? You know, lower tech tools, this one's very simple. Here's one from a project I worked on, are more inclusive and engaging. So this was at a company in Calgary in Alberta, Canada, where I worked. And it was on the way to the coffee room. And our sponsor walked past this wall maybe 4 or 5 times a day. And quite often they would take a look and see when, you know, something was about to be worked on or had something, is it in progress? And they would ask us about it. And I would never have got that exposure with a Microsoft project plan or some other element. So although it was kind of technically inferior to some of these scheduling tools, it was better in that we had our stand-ups here every day. We talked about the cards and we moved it over. And it was more inclusive, more information sharing, right? Sharing the power. Willingness to challenge the status quo. Yes, so this is looking for ways to improve. It's having our retrospective and asking what we can do better, right? Trying out new ideas for an iteration or a sprint or two. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, that's okay. You know, well, let's learn from that. So this is a view of the different things that happen within a sprint or iteration. The retrospective is the learning element, right? It's the, what can we do better? And we try and improve on 3 elements. It's the product that we're building, right? It's the processes that we're using, and it's the people as well, our own team skills and abilities. Do we need training? Do we need mentoring? How do we continue to improve? It's all about gathering lessons learned while they're still actionable. We don't want to wait to the end of the project, gather our lessons learned, and then apply them to the next project. Let's do that now while they're still actionable, right? And very applicable, because it is our project. So we asked what went well. We used to ask what didn't go well, but some cultures don't like to be critical, and we get better information if we ask instead, are there any areas for improvement? So you might just want to if you're asking what did not go well, it depends on your culture, but some people might be more receptive to, can you think of ways to improve, as opposed to what did not go well, which is a little bit more direct and potentially a criticism of the organization or how we're doing things. And of course, recommendations, things for us to try or experiment in the next sprint or iteration. That's the basics of it, but we can switch it up. We can use graphical ways for visual learners. We could ask them, this is an action wheel. We say, put stickies on this board. Is there anything we should be doing more of? Anything we should be doing less of? What are we not doing, but perhaps should start doing? What are we doing that we should perhaps stop doing? You know, and we could put them up on a board, you know, have a retrospective. We could even ask people to think about it and continue to post ideas, you know, if anything comes to you through the rest of the day, let's say. But it's about learning, challenging, and adapting how we work so that we can improve. Here's an example of one of those action wheels with some notes about things to start and things to stop. This was another IT project, so that they wanted to do less customization of a tool that had to be redone every time we got a new version of it. They wanted to do more, they wanted to co-locate the team with the business, right? Rather than just having a product owner with us, we wanted to go move our entire team to the business community that we were serving, that type of thing. So recognize that the bulk of good ideas usually comes from a team, not from a project manager or a scrum master, and there are no dumb ideas. You know, let's talk about this stuff. The good news is that we can try stuff for a sprint or an iteration, which is typically pretty short, 1 to 2 weeks. And then we can figure out if it's working. We want to keep doing that, or if it didn't work, right? In which case we can try something else. So capitalize on the successes, learn from our mistakes. Another quote, you know, when my employees make mistakes trying to improve things, then we give them a round of applause, because it's really those suggestions and ideas for improvement that we want to encourage. This is a nice board of experiments, ideas and experiments that the team would like to try, right? And this can be a great way of facilitating a retrospective as well. Instead of focusing on what happened, let's generate ideas for things that we want to try out so that we can continue to get better. So they have this sort of ideas cloud, things that we could do, and then they promote them into, well, what are we actually going to do? What are our current experiments? What worked? What didn't work? What did we abandon, right? So lots of different ideas for trying to get these leadership concepts implemented on our projects. And finally, encouraging each other, recognizing the contributions of everybody and showing appreciation for contributions, right? Celebrating our victories and values. You know, the same project manager I first worked for told me that we should treat our staff like volunteers, because all that paying people does is ensure that they turn up for work. But then what they do once they turn up is on that spectrum of negative all the way up to incredibly positive. So if you're working with volunteers, you take an interest in the person. You know, you thank them for turning up, and you understand why they're there. You know, why did you get into software development? What are you hoping to learn this year? Are there any ways that we can build your learnings into the project plan, so you can try being an architect for a couple of sprints or iterations? So you can try, you know, leading a small group of people. You know, get involved in your team members and what they want to get out of their careers. Say thank you, you know, in a proper format. So what are we thanking them for? Why that was important, right? And, you know, what result it had and why it's important. It can create sort of upward spirals of good feelings, as opposed to people feeling sort of underappreciated. And celebrate achievements frequently. Yeah, this is something I was guilty of as a junior project manager. I would say, let's wait till we finish the project, then we'll celebrate. I'll take you all out for beer and pizzas when we're done. And that is too little too late, right? We've got to celebrate as we go, because that's what actually builds momentum to push past problems and overcome barriers. So we need to recognize things. It's more about the contribution than the achievement. This quote I like here: ceremonies, celebrations, and rituals are not about the event, right? They're about touching the hearts and souls of every employee. And so I think if we remember this, our role of project manager is this recognizer of team contribution, right? As we go, not at the end. And so lots of good stuff we can do here. So that was a whirlwind sort of tour of leadership. So let's talk about, and leading agile teams, but let's talk about servant leadership and how it actually implements that before we get into these other topics. And I realize I've been yapping too much, so let's get through this. Servant leadership, promoted by Scrum, is being the bridge to success for others. That's the best way I can describe it. So the snake in the middle here is the servant leader. They are being the bridge to success for others. And servant leaders, it kind of flips the model. So this is the old school way of team members serving the team leader, and servant leader is the team leader that serves the team. So what do you need? What problems have you got? How can I help you? It's being that servant leader. And the types of things they do is to shield the team from interruptions so they can get their work done, right? Avoid, try and shield them from all these requests from other projects or administration sort of overburden. Remove obstacles. So when the team meets in the daily stand-up meeting or daily scrum and talks about impediments and blockers, it's our role to try and remove those things, get them the machines they need, get them the access to the people they need, sort of get the other teams who are supposedly doing stuff for us to do that work so that we can get on with our work. Remove those impediments. We also have to communicate and recommunicate that project vision. When people are heads down in their work, they often forget or lose sight of where we're trying to get to. So communicating that project vision and providing that aid and support, the thanks, the recognition, the training that people need to feel appreciated and keep the momentum going on their projects. So altogether, the servant leader plays all of these roles, shielding them from interruptions, removing impediments, communicating the vision, and also providing support, training, thanks, and recognition. So that's servant leadership, as we often see on agile projects, but there's new ways of leading too. My company, Leading Answers, I chose the logo of Canada geese flying in formation. So this is my company website. And the reason I chose Canada geese is, well, I'm based in Canada now, but geese, when they're flying in formation, they rotate that leadership role, right? So there's always one at the front. They fly in formation because it's more aerodynamic. They're flying in the sort of the drag behind that lead goose, and they can go 50% further flying in formation than they can flying sort of as a line or on their own. What's interesting is that the geese that are sort of squawking or honking, it's never the lead goose, right? It's the others, and it's believed that they're encouraging the lead goose to keep up the speed, right? Because they're in the most drag position and then they'll rotate. So it's a shared leadership role. They rotate it, and the others are encouraging the leader actually as they go. And if one gets injured, two other birds will go down, wait with it, and create another V formation to rejoin the flock or whatever. So that's all very nice, shared leadership, but we can't all be in teams of geese. What other examples of shared leadership do we have? There's a very famous symphony called the Orpheus Orchestra. It's an orchestra rather. And the interesting thing about them is it doesn't have a conductor. This orchestra, you'd think, well, that would sound bad, but they've actually won a number of Grammy Awards. And the big thing about the Orpheus Orchestra is that they share that conductor role. They rotate it, and it gives everybody a feel for, well, what does it actually mean? You get to be a better leader, but you also get to be a better team member as well. Once you understand what's involved in conducting that orchestra. And so that's something that we can take to our projects as well. So is a single servant leader still relevant? As we enter, projects with more uncertainty, volatility, complexity, and ambiguity, it's felt that a single leader quite often isn't sufficient, and we need to pull on the activities and skills of a team. Another great book, Reinventing Organizations, Frederick Laloux, he talks about how organizations are evolving, and he gave these different stages of organizations colors. We started off with red, and then we went to amber, orange, green, and teal is the latest incarnation. And he talks about the different feels of these different organizations. So red is sort of based on fear and short-term focus. Street gangs and the mafia are fear-based organizations, right? It's a very hierarchical command and control, and you don't criticize that, otherwise you will be penalized. Amber is, very formal, hierarchical pyramid, command and control. What and the how is controlled. So think of stable hierarchies like the military, or strict sort of churches and things like that. Orange now is more progressive, command and control on what we're trying to do, but freedom to choose how to do it, right? So it's all about, meritocracy. Smart people rise to the top, or people that get results. And a lot of organizations, old school organizations, have this orange focus on results, but still a command and control structure. And then more recently, green organizations are all about empowerment, values-driven, family mentality. Southwest Airlines, Ben & Jerry's, Gore and Associates. These are all good organizations that create a culture of trust and respect for each other. But there's a new breed of distributed organizations that don't have a central pyramid, right? They're run by small groups. So the Birdsall group is a medical nursing group that has very small teams of about 25 nurses that work in a small regional area. And then as they recruit more nurses, they'll split off into another sort of small cluster. They do their hiring and firing and training. There is very little central control. Another company, Hire, you've probably heard about, has spawned many different startup organizations, and they have no centralized control. Agile usually focuses in moving organizations from orange to green, but this teal is a whole other level. Quite often these hierarchies are nested within them. You might find a department that's still based on fear or command and control within an organization that's of a different level. Agile is all about servant leadership, delighting the customer, engagement, shared values, stakeholder balance. But teal is shared leadership, distributed decision making, right? Working for an organization with a higher purpose, like Patagonia, that wants to save the planet and make sustainably based clothing lines, right? And Birdsall that I mentioned. So we are evolving beyond the agile sort of green stuff now, and we're beginning to see more of this organic, plural leadership. There isn't a single person or a single figurehead making decisions for the organization. And that's where host leadership comes in. Host leadership says it's very unlikely that you're going to find all the skills you need in a single person, right? Some of the problems we face today are just too complex for one person or even one organization to solve. We think about, developing COVID vaccines. That was a worldwide collaboration between many different groups to get that done. So many of today's challenges are fuzzy, ill-defined, but they're interconnected and messy and not single-led endeavors. The role of a host leader is to step forward, invite people, create a good working environment, and then often to step back So allow the team members to contribute. And this is very much aligned with servant leadership. And I think the two approaches mesh together well. But why I think we should learn about host leadership is because it gives us some additional sort of roles or viewpoints that we can operate from as well. We can merge in with our servant leadership. So host leadership talks about 6 different roles of a host leader. And it uses this analogy of hosting a party, of being a host. It says, we need to be the initiator. So something needs to move us to take action, right? Something that we are passionate about. We need to develop a cure for COVID. We need to create an environment for local artists to come together and have somewhere to perform, whatever it is. There's always an initiator moved to take action. And then we have this role of inviter. We need to find people who are also like-minded and motivated to take action on this cause. So the inviter role. And then the space creator. We've got to create an environment, a project, a collaboration space, whether it's online or physical, so that we can all get together and work on this. The gatekeeper. We've got to define norms and boundaries. This is what we are and this is what we're not. We're going to do this, but we won't do that. So we need that gatekeeper role. And then we need to connect people. So we invite people in, but then we've got to get them working together. And so there's this host sort of role of connecting people and also contributing ourselves. So I think these really nicely complement servant leadership with some defined roles. And then the other thing it brings is these positions. We typically occupy one of these 4 positions. We're either in the spotlight, sort of outlining the vision, etc., or we're working with people one-on-one, learning about people and getting them to contribute or helping them to contribute. Or we're up observing, so sort of steering high level. Are we meeting our goals? Are we going in the right directions? We need different skill sets, etc. Or we could be working one-on-one behind the scenes, maybe mentoring somebody, right? And so host leadership, I'm excited by it. It's got some great contributions, I think, that we can add to our agile teams, right? And merge it in. So none of this stuff is incompatible. And it really talks about the fact that when we look at a great leader, there's so much going on, right? Setting a vision, having communication skills, inspiring trust, empowering people, being action-oriented, being warmth and approachable, willingness to take personal risks, and using unconventional strategies. That is super hard to find this in a single person. And we are witnessing this all in a single person at the moment, but it is very hard. I should stick to, I guess, teamwork stuff. But we need concern for people and we need concern for production. And they aren't always in the same person, right? If we extend this metaphor from, we also have things and people. So that's what we were just talking about. And then we also have ideas, strategy, and we have ideas, strategy, and we have data, right? And quite often the personality types that occupy this space, aren't the same person. Strategy is all about using our head. Building relationships is about using our heart with other people. And delivering results is our arms and legs doing the work. And so there's a lot of stuff that blends together in leading a team. So we need strategists, we need an influencer, right? The people person. We need a relationship builder who's going in and checking in with, why was Joe quiet in the meeting? Is he okay? We need an implementer. We need people that just love churning out, product. All of these things is hard to find in a single person. But if we're aware of it, we can start engaging the team in fulfilling some of these activities for us. And so we can go back to that original model of leadership, modeling desired behavior, communicating a vision, enabling others to act, this willingness to challenge the status quo and encouraging each other. And I think the way that we broaden it out is that we internalize these values ourselves, right? We practice them and get good at them. And then we encourage other people to do them as well. And I think that's the way that we create this well-rounded set of shared leadership in our projects and then, in our wider organization. So that was all I had. I realized I've actually gone over time, but these are some great resources that I would recommend you look at. If any of this stuff resonates, please take a look here. And I've got a ton of time now to hang around for questions and things if there are any. I'd be very happy to talk about this, but I realized I had too much material. Sorry about that.
It was amazing. And for me, for example, host leadership was just finding, because we all hear about the servant leadership. Even in the book that which I read, there is no indication for this ACP. Even in the PMBOK 7, I haven't read the host's leadership, so it's coming. So it's the next probably PMBOK 8 vision where it's going. Oh, it's really interesting. I would like to encourage everybody who is participating. I'm sure you are all professional project managers. You do it in practice. You have lots of questions. All the theories that are presented here are really, we are those who are taking them in practice and implementing and jungling from one practice to another practice and using all those. One question that I probably would like to ask you, when we talked about the skills, these top 20 skills you had on the list, and the top 4, which was started with honesty, the third place was competence. So that's for me, being competence in the project management tools and practices, or competence on this specific technical subject. What do you mean by what is meant by the competence?
Yeah, it's a great question. So within the context of the survey that was given, when they talk about being competent, they talk about within the business domain and the work that's being delivered. Okay, so we don't have to know everything about what we're building, but we should at least understand the business and have that recognition of what we're trying to build. So it's okay to be backed up by team members, but we need to be competent there. And if we think about the PMI's sort of talent triangle, I think it comes back to that sort of the business strategy one, about understanding why we're doing this, and it's being competent there so that we could be thought of as a trusted advisor for the business.
I see. I have lots of other questions, but I will let others.
Sure.
If there are any questions, please, this is the right time to ask. Mike.
May I ask one question I have regarding the leadership? Recently, I have met article on Forbes stating that empathy is the most important skill for leaders. What do you think about that?
Yeah, certainly it is. It's a big part of that sort of base layer, right? Below leadership, I had emotional intelligence. And empathy is all about the enabler for working with others. So unless we can understand where people are coming from, then we aren't going to be able to influence them or lead them. So I totally agree with that. I think it's a critical emotional intelligence skill, which is the foundation of leadership. So yeah, absolutely. So empathy is one. We've also got to, before that, control our own emotions, right? And recognize when we're becoming angry or agitated and know how to control that. So yeah, it's part of that emotional intelligence, I would say.
And one more question regarding the digital tools used in project management. There is a big emphasis on using not digital kind of boards like task boards or Kanban boards, and instead use like physical one that may stand in the room where the team is located. But in recent era, when everything is digitalized, I see that it's becoming almost impossible to use that. What do you think? Should we transfer to digital instruments or still stick to the real task boards?
Yeah, there used to be this recommendation of low tech, high touch.
Yeah,
right? And
exactly.
it talked about like physical cards. Now, the big reason for that was though, so that we got participation from the team. I think if we can use electronic tools that are easy to use, like Trello or something where you're just dragging a card and you can quickly create a card, I think we get most of the benefits there because we're still encouraging and allowing the team members to, be involved in that planning process. I think it becomes a problem when we're into, Microsoft Project or Primavera or something that's super difficult and it's going to be a barrier to entry. But I think if we can use electronic tools that are easy and people don't mind using, so, Miro and some of these whiteboard tools are actually pretty easy. So if we can't be together, then make it as easy as we can to contribute, I would say.
Okay, and especially after the COVID, most teams have become like they are distributed in different places. So I guess there is no any other way.
We may not get back to that. Or co-located teams, might be a thing of the past.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. May I ask it?
Absolutely.
So it's very interesting to hear your opinion. The leadership, it is a skill that you are born with, or it can be taught. You are a leader, or you are not, or you can learn it.
That's a great question. I didn't speak about that, and it's a fascinating topic. So I believe it's absolutely something that we can develop. And I think there's a separation between leadership and charisma or presence. And there is this misnomer that to be a good leader, you have to have like a rock star personality or charisma and be able to command the room and inspire respect and speak confidently at all times. There's the other book that I really like, From Good to Great, which is all about how some companies got better and many others didn't. And they all had what was called level 5 leaders. And these level 5 leaders were quite often not the most charismatic leaders. Some of them were quite quiet and introverted, but you know what? They cared and they worked hard. And they are true leaders, not the charismatic rock star personalities necessarily. So long answer to your question, but absolutely it is a skill that we can develop. We continue to get better at our soft skills, our power skills. You don't have to be, sexy or dynamic or whatever to be a great leader. Quite often the very best leaders are quite shy and reserved and quiet, but they look after people and they get the work done. And that project leadership book, the Jeffrey Pinto one, I've got up on the screen there, he talks about cowboys, and he says that the classic idea we have in our mind of a cowboy is, he rides into town and he kills the bad guys, and then he rides off with the pretty school teacher and they live happily ever after. But that's a Hollywood cowboy. What cowboys really do, John Wayne wasn't a cowboy, John Wayne was an actor, right? What cowboys really do is they look after a herd. They look after the cows and they protect them. And we get fixated on a movie star view of something when a true leader is actually looking after, the team, and they're making sure everyone's okay and they have what they need. And so anyway, probably too much information, but absolutely we can continue to develop. We're not born as leaders. You don't have to be charismatic. All of these skills are learnable, and we continue to get better at them as we get older and a little bit, have dealt with people more, I would say.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Mike, recently I got obsessed about the skill that I think is very important for project management. This is adaptability. I'm getting into it more and more because the world around us, the methodologies that we are using are actually changing so dramatically and so fast that I think that one of the skills that project managers and the team leaders, anybody in the project will need is adaptability. What do you think about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the last few years have taught us that things can change very quickly, right? And the quote about evolution, it's not the strongest that survive, it's the ones that are most able to adapt, I think is very true. And so I think as project managers, if we can learn to, canvas ideas from our team and from externally and be able to change direction, I think that is a core skill, to be able to learn new things and be okay with not being an expert at stuff. This is something I'm doing at the moment. I'm trying to learn some new skills, and it's awkward as an adult, right? Because we're used to being good at stuff, and I'm terrible at all this stuff, and you just have to let it go and realize that everybody has to learn, and we need to be adaptable, and that's the only way that we're going to be able to stay current and useful for people. So I agree, and unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it's slowing down anytime soon. So I think adaptability, flexibility, the ability to learn are all, really strong requirements and good skills for us to have.
To learn new skills, you need to forget. So you need to unlearn and then learn. So this is the hardest. If you start from the scratch, for example, when you were very familiar with the waterfall and all these methodologies, now you have to switch your mind, and it's much harder than starting from the zero ground with Agile, for example. This is the way that you were just born with. So any other questions?
Mike, thank you for this great inspired presentation. I have some question because it's logical what we're talking about. But when we talk about leadership and management, it's very important to how complex is environment and how they delegate tasks between teams. Yes, what can you say about these topics? Couple of words.
Yeah, I think we need to leverage local subject matter knowledge, right? So if we're in a very complicated environment, maybe the work we had planned may not be the best work to undertake right now. Maybe there are other things of a higher priority or things that are more practical. So I think, as a leader in a complex environment, what we delegate depends upon the skill of our team. And sometimes the best way to figure out what to do is to canvas the team or the subject matter experts and try and leverage their expertise, because we're not always the expert in the domain that we're developing. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, exactly.
Any more questions?
Lela, just comment if it's possible to share the recording. It will be great.
Yes, we will share. Mike, do I have your permission to share the recording for
Absolutely.
the chapter? Yes, we recorded. We asked at the beginning, so we asked at the beginning that it will be re-recorded. So if there are more questions, please feel free. If not, it was hi, Natalia. Natalia, you are on mute.
Oh, sorry. Hi, everybody. My question is, Mike, how do you see the project management manager's role in benefits realization?
Just help me understand. I've got the right your question there. When you say benefits realization, this is how does the project manager help, like the sponsor or the organization, get the benefits they were hoping for from the project? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, the latter one.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So yeah, I guess we need to make sure that we're spending project energy and funds in the right direction. And so for that, I like Agile's frequent check-ins in terms of demos and showing what we've worked on and confirming what we're going to work on next. So I think in terms of benefits realization, we should always be checkpointing, hey, this is what we've done. Does this look good? Are we moving in the right direction? And this is what we've got planned next. Is this the most, highest priority element? Now, this is one of the areas where I think Agile can really learn from traditional. If we look at program management, there are some great benefits realization sort of artifacts and processes in there that I think we could learn from on Agile projects. So quite often, you know, the benefits aren't delivered or realized at the end of our project. We need to revisit them afterwards and learn from, well, did we actually capture that? And if we didn't, how do we get smarter for the next project down the line? So I think this is an opportunity for a bit of a hybrid blending. Agile is great at prioritizing the highest business value things first. Traditional approaches are great at having a measurement framework and ensuring that we are sort of running efficient projects and we don't continually kick off projects that underdeliver. And so I would say, you know, learn about both approaches and try and combine them together.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So we are over 1 hour and we are all project managers and we are just exceeding our time. So I would like to thank you, Mike. It was really inspiring, very motivational. And also I for example, heard first time about this host leadership and it's very interesting. I really appreciate your time and commitment to project management. And hope to have some connections and some opportunities to talk with you next time.
Absolutely. No, it was great to be here. And if you have people studying for PMP or ACP, you know, maybe I can do a kickoff session or answer some questions or whatever. Happy to stay engaged with the chapter. It seems like a great group. And yeah, I'd love to be involved in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Very much.
Okay.